Why, hello. Welcome to the Friday reading of Wine in the Sand, written by Jim White, edited by me. I hope you're enjoying your book. I hope that you're learning a lot. Today, I'm going to read chapter 79, one of my favorites. Made me cry every time I read it. How Not to Travel, Part 2. We boarded our chartered plane just after midnight. This time we were in normal aircraft seats instead of sideways ones made of straps. That was a definite upgrade. I'd like to pause for a moment and help you enjoy the fireplace on both the television and in reality. Adds a little ambiance, doesn't it? Now back to the book. 2.5 hours later, we landed in Cairo, Egypt. This would have been an awesome place for a long layover, as the tourist in me wanted to see some pyramids and the Sphinx. But because it was dark and we didn't even leave the plane for the 2 hours we were on the ground, I didn't see anything but the airport from the window. It's not a very impressive view. Off into the night sky again we went, and this time we landed at 7:20 a.m. local time in Shannon, Ireland. We had a 2-hour and 20-minute layover here as well, but this one was more to our liking. We had to get off the plane and wait in the terminal. We must have looked pretty beat up and sad by now, because the first thing we saw in the terminal was a bar. It was closed. It was 7:20 in the morning, remember? But the Irish were having none of that for the poor Americans coming home from a war. They immediately found someone to tend the bar and started serving up pints of beer. Our new mission was to see how many pints of Guinness we could consume before we took our next flight in 2 hours. It was my first time in Ireland, and it left a great impression on me. Several pints, and 2 hours later, a well-intoxicated group made their way back onto the plane. The plane bathroom was about to get a workout. Our next stop, after flying for 5 hours and 30 minutes, was Bangor, Maine, but it was only 9:15 local time. Time zones are crazy, aren't they? This was one of the most fun, crazy, and exciting days in my life. As we stepped into the terminal for our 90-minute layover, we were met by hundreds of people. At first, I didn't realize they were here for us, but soon it became apparent that they were there to welcome the troops home. Us. We were the troops. Wow. They had a full marching band playing music. The VFW was there in full uniform, saluting us and shaking our hands. People were cheering for us like we had just won the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the World Cup all at once. They were hugging us and slapping us on the back, telling us thank you over and over. Kids were actually asking us for our autographs. It was one of the most unreal things I have ever experienced. This went on the entire time we were there. I've got to admit, I had to wipe away a tear every now and then. I wish everyone could experience this once in their lives. At this point, we are up to over 17 hours of travel time so far. This does not make for a happy traveler, but we were motivated. We were in the USA now and on our way to people we knew. We tried to stay focused. Fox had called Eaker to try and set up the rest of our trips, but we quickly found out there were some problems. The people in travel at Eaker had only set us up to get us as far as our next flight. After that, we would have to call them each time we needed another flight and book them one at a time. For whatever reason, our next flight took us to Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in North Carolina. Why we weren't flying directly into Eaker Air Force Base, I had no idea. It was simple in my head, but apparently life wasn't as easy as my brain told me it should be. When Fox tried to call the travel office to get the next flight from North Carolina to Arkansas, we discovered the time change meant they weren't even open yet. Our only solution was to wait until we arrived in North Carolina. Frustration started to rear its ugly head among the tired troops. We boarded our plane again and headed to North Carolina. It was a short flight, and by now we had lost our sense of humor. crappy food, tired and severely jet lagged, we got off the flight and made our way to a phone to call Eaker. The travel people there were clueless. They couldn't find us flights home from there for at least 24 or more hours, but told us to keep calling them back to see what they could come up with. Remember, this was before cell phones and the internet. We couldn't just look this stuff up for ourselves. I had made enough flight reservations for myself in the past that I knew this was a load of crap and I could do better. I started making calls to all the different airlines for myself. After several hours of the travel office being useless, I found a flight from Raleigh, North Carolina to Nashville that left at about 8 p.m. But we weren't in Raleigh, we were 65 miles away. We called the travel office at Eaker and told them we wanted that flight from Raleigh to Nashville. They asked what we would do after that, and we told them we would figure it out ourselves. We had survived an effing war. We sure as hell could figure out how to get our butts from point A to point B in the United States. We found a person in the travel office at Seymour Johnson and told them our problem. People seemed to be very sympathetic to the troops coming home, and they quickly arranged a bus to take us from the base to the airport in Raleigh. 90 minutes later, with our M16 rifles in hand, we piled out of the bus and into the airport in Raleigh. Stop for a second and picture this. 9 guys who were bleary-eyed and travel-weary, falling out of a bus and into a civilian airport terminal, each carrying M16s and our duffel bags. We had been carrying these effing guns for so long now, we didn't even give them a second thought. Even pre-9/11, we looked mighty suspicious. Airport security immediately found us. We quickly explained our situation, and believe it or not, they allowed us to continue carrying our rifles. Maybe it helped that we didn't have any magazines in the guns. Can you imagine the looks we were getting from the other people in the airport? At least we were in uniform and looked like we should be carrying these things. We went to the ticket counter to check our duffel bags and get our boarding passes. With just 40 minutes until the plane took off, we barely made it to the airport. We hustled through the airport to the gate and straight to the gate agent. The look on her face when she saw us coming was priceless. You would think that she had never seen 9 guys with machine guns over their shoulders walking towards her before. We stopped in front of her and held out our passes. "You cannot board this plane with those guns," she said rather forcefully. "Ma'am, we've traveled on several planes from Saudi Arabia with these rifles and have not had a problem yet," I stammered out before Fox could get 3 brain cells to work together. "Well, this isn't a military aircraft. This is a commercial aircraft with passengers. We don't allow any firearms in the cabin." "Ma'am," I said as sympathetically as I could muster, "we don't even have bullets for these things." By the look on her face, she wasn't going to budge on this. "Okay," I said before she could deny us again. "Tell us what we can do to get on that plane. We're just trying to get home." "Hold on, let me make a call," she said. She picked up the phone and spoke to someone higher up the chain than her. "Okay," she said, "we can check the guns and get them back to you at the end of the flight." I looked at Fox as he wrestled with that decision. We were all looking at him, daring him to say no. I don't care if they took these effing rifles and threw them out the window. Getting home was job number 1. Finally, he said okay, and we had an airport security person collect them and put them somewhere. Who cared? We were getting on that plane. A few minutes later, we sat back and relaxed for our 90-minute flight to Nashville, Tennessee. I actually felt like I was in my home territory. I had been to Nashville a few times, so although I didn't know the town well, at least I had been there, and for me, that was close enough. I could realistically rent a car and drive back from there, so I wasn't as antsy anymore. But I still wanted to finish this fiasco. As soon as we made it to Nashville, we had 40 minutes to catch a connecting flight to Memphis, and from Memphis, a bus was being sent to drive us to Eaker. We quickly collected our bags and guns and made our way to the next gate. This time, before the agent could even start the conversation, we quickly told her what the last plane had done for us, so she could just do the same thing. She made a call anyhow and ended up checking our guns just like the last lady did. We sat on our last plane, finally. 90 more minutes, we were in Memphis, which was the nearest, largest town with an airport to Eaker Air Force Base. In my mind, I felt like they should have just sent a plane for us, but I hear buses are much cheaper. We found our bags and guns one more time and loaded our asses onto the bus. It was 11 p.m. local time. We had been moving forward for over 24 hours now. The bus met us outside. It wasn't until we shoved our bags on the bus, sat down, and the bus started to pull away that I felt I could actually take a deep breath and feel like I was done. Done jumping from plane to bus to plane. Done trying to convince travel agents and military travel people and everyone in between that we needed to be somewhere, to go somewhere, to catch something. It felt nonstop. Now, my brain had a chance to stop thinking ahead. We were on our way to our destination. 24 hours ago, I was knocking sand off my boots in Saudi Arabia, boarding a plane from a war. It had only taken 6 plane rides and 3 buses, but we were finally on our way home. Well, almost home. I still had to make it back to Kentucky, back to my people. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's reading of Wine in the Sand, written by Jim White, available on Amazon for your Kindle and a hard copy. Get a copy. Get several. Leave them around town. People will enjoy them. Have a lovely weekend.